activators with us on today. We are going to have real talk and real conversation on how educators, how students, how families, and how the community at large is been affected by COVID-19. Again, we are going to bring real talk and real conversation to you on today about how our students, how our teachers, how the community at large has been affected by COVID-19, how our Black community has been affected, and how this affects this nation. We have a chain of questions that we are going to tackle on today and bring to you on today. We welcome your feedback after each discussion topic. Please call into the station. Please call into the Vnetwork station. The number is 860-461-7577. So I want to go ahead and start. My panel is with me on today. So first of all, the panel is going to introduce themselves. I'm going to start off by introducing myself. I am Evangelist Joy Harper. I'm a science educator in the Washington, D.C. school system. And I'm just so honored to be with you on today. And I thank CEO Pastor Donald Padgett for having us with you and having us here on the Vnetwork on today. And I'm going to go forward in the following order of David, Pastor Sherry, and then Dr. Levy, if you all would introduce yourselves at this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Evangelist. Thank you so much for having me and being a part of this wonderful program. My name is David Eiffel. It's pronounced like the Eiffel Tower, but it's spelled like I fill a bucket of water. And so I'm an educator. I'm a music educator, actually. I've been teaching music for now 15 years. Time goes by so fast. Been teaching music for 15 years, and this is my second year teaching in DC public schools. And I'm also a teacher advocate. So I'll go ahead and pass it on over.
Okay, Pastor Sherry.
Hi, I'm Sherry Garland, and I am, Pastor Sherry Garland. Pastor Sherry Garland, and I am an assistant principal in Virginia Public Schools. And I have been educating this is my 30th year, 4th year as an administrator, and 26 years in the classroom in various capacities, but for the most of my career, an English teacher at the middle school level. Thank you for having me, Joy.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Levy.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Levy. I am an author, entrepreneur, owner of Q Productions Company, inventor of Q Hair Regrowth Spray. Also, I am a gospel recording artist, educator. I'm one of the adjunctive professors and vice president of Bible College. In addition to that, I'm also a community activist. I've authored several bills and laws regarding civil rights, and I pretty much do anything to support life and the healing of our nation. And it's an honor to be here on this panel on the VNet work with Pastor Donald, Evangelist Joy. It's an honor to be here also with you, Pastor Sherry, and Mr. David Eiffel. And I look forward to sharing with all of you.
Thank you. Thank you again, panelists, for joining me on the Vnetwork Radio today. At this time, we are going to have a quick musical tribute. It is my honor to tell you that Dr. Levy produced and wrote this song. God laid it on his heart in lieu of COVID-19. He was able to produce this song, and this musical tribute is going to be in memory of those educators that lost their lives. Miss White, an educator in the DC school system, recently lost her life due to COVID-19. So we want to have this moment to remember Miss White, our colleague. And we want to remember all of the other educators that have been affected by COVID-19. We want to remember the students that have been affected by COVID-19. And we want to remember anyone all the other individuals across this nation that has been affected by COVID-19 or has family members or friends that has been affected by COVID-19. At this time, Dr. Levy will go ahead and give his special musical tribute. Thank you so much, Dr. Levy.
It is only a matter of time until the coronavirus starts to spread through communities here in the United States.
New numbers as this coronavirus spreads. More than 160,000 cases in the United States. Over 2,980 deaths.
I cry to my father from his child. I cry. Only you can help me out. I cry. Lord, no one understands. I cry. 'Cause only you can. I cry. I cry. I cry. Oh Lord. Lord, will you rescue me? Oh Lord, will you rescue me? I cry, just can't find the words to say. I cry, I just wanna run away. I cry. Lord, I need some help. I cry. Can't do this by myself. I cry. I cry. Ooh, I cry. Oh Lord. Lord, will you rescue me? Oh Lord, will you rescue me? Will you fix the problems in my home? Rescue me. Woo! I'll work my fingers to the bone. Will you give me rest? Will you give me peace? For the when I'm down, will you lift me? Will you fill my hope? Will you heal my soul? I'm down on my knees. I cry to my father from his child. I cry. Only you can help me out. I cry. You know what it's about. I cry. Only you can help me out. Help me. Lord, you rescued me. You rescued me, and then you set me free.
Thank you so much, Dr. Levy, for that beautiful tribute. Thank you so much. We're so honored to have you be able to come on and play your music on today. Another interesting thing that Dr. Levy did not mention is that Dr. Levy is up for a Gospel Choice Awards nominee for a gospel artist and several other things. And this song in particular has made it across categories. So when you get an opportunity after this broadcast is over, please follow his page and go vote for him. That is certainly a beautiful song that the Lord has laid upon your heart. I want to now move forward with our real talk and real conversation about how our students are affected, about how our teachers are affected, about how this African American community is affected in the community at large. I want to first start off by talking about mental anxiety on educators and students. And I would like for you, David, if you would lead us off in this panel, how are educators and students affected mentally? And talk to me about the anxiety levels. Let's discuss this.
First of all, definitely Dr. Levy, just want to make sure I got it right. Such an awesome performance. Very nice. I loved it. And so I wanted to talk about you and everybody about a little known thing that in the community, especially with people of color in terms of getting help and mental illness. What are going through and what we're still going through as Americans right now is mental illness and a lot of trauma that we're going through, not just the kids and a lot of um, administrators and a lot of the central offices or of every school system is really focusing on the kids' trauma, but not a lot of focus is going on with what's going on with teachers. Teachers have been isolated. Teachers have been basically locked up as essentially when we as teachers are very social beings. We like to get in front of people. We like to help people, especially me in my profession. I'm a music teacher, so I love being in front of kids. So we find that a lot of our lives has been traumatized too, and there's not enough emphasis and not enough thinking in terms of what about the teachers? What's going on with the teachers? And I know because personally I'm a product of having been diagnosed with anxiety and having to go to therapists and especially in our Black community. Remember, therapy is not always um, looked upon as something that is important in our Black community, and it's something where I know for a fact that a lot of teachers are going with anxiety coming back into try or even coming back into schools, being forced back into schools. Imagine these teachers being told, that your job is dependent on you going back into a building that might not necessarily be safe. And, because we're still in a pandemic, we're still having, some people are getting vaccinated, true, but the vast majority of Americans right now, especially kids, are not vaccinated. So even if we do get vaccinated, when we do get vaccinated, we still have the possibility of spreading it to others. Let's say we have teachers who have multi-generational households. We have that anxiety every day of do we go back? When do we go back? How do we go back? How do we protect ourselves? Oh my, and it's all that constant guard up all the time. And it's just absolutely teachers I know have been crying. I've been advocating for them. And even the fact that even in my school system, DC Public Schools has even opened a little bit for hybrid. It was such a big fight because it's so much anxiety, so much therapy that needs to go on in terms of teachers there. And if you want highly qualified educators and not just, glorified babysitters that are in there that are really working with kids, you have to start thinking about the teachers. And I think it's something that is very much lacking in our in America. The America's thinking about kids. Let's get the kids back to school. Get the kids back. Rush them back. And I think there's a huge rush and a push to put people back that not necessarily are ready to go back. And I think there needs to be more of a push for the mental capacity and the mental status of teachers. As I didn't. Am I good? Keep going. Am I? I didn't want to. I didn't want to interrupt. Oh, I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now? Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, keep going, David.
Okay. Oh, okay. Good. So again, I'm been diagnosed with anxiety, and there's a lot of teachers that I know suffering from anxiety, depression, and even now when teachers, we're going through a series right now, how to create trauma related classrooms or trauma conscious classrooms for the kids. And all this is again for the kids. And I understand that the kids are going through trauma, but there has not been very, very little, or maybe not at all. And I don't know if this is anybody else's experience, that a lot has not been said towards the teachers and how this pandemic has affected and really decimated a lot of the teachers' lives. And even still now, how we have to interact with people. We're scared. We
Yes.
are scared. We are terrified of coming back right now, because we, just like the workers, are front line. We are at the front of the kids. Anytime kids get sick, 9 times out of 10, the teachers are going to get that disease as well. So when you're telling kids not to touch, not to hug, not to this, that, and the other, we have to be in a bubble too. And it's not, for kids, one, it's not feasible to say the least on that. And then at the same time, telling teachers that our lives depend on this, our livelihoods depend on us getting outside this bubble and going back and acting like everything is normal is just not the way to go.
Yes. Thank you so much, David, for that insight. And I certainly agree with you as an educator as well in the DC school systems. And as a colleague, me and David are colleagues. I will say this: I contracted COVID-19 back in January, and glory be to God, I survived COVID-19. But there is still fear of, I don't want to contract COVID-19 again because I survived it once. But, who's to say if I get it again that I'm going to have the same output? And when we look and see that when we look at colleagues such as Miss Helen White and see that she lost her life due to COVID, and she's a teacher just like each and every one of us, and that could have very well been anybody on this panel and any teacher across this nation. It makes us a little bit fearsome in a sense of going back into the classroom. And another point that you brought up, David, is that, we are in a bubble and our students are in a bubble. And you brought up the point of how realistic is it to think that students are going to really practice those proper protocols and not wear their masks when they haven't seen each other in months. When some of these students are dating, some of these are teenage students that have boyfriends and girlfriends, and they're dating, and the ladies want to look cute for their boo-boos and vice versa. And when we think about elementary students, these students don't even understand the true aspect of
going
what
on.
is going on right now.
Yeah.
So to expect them to wear their masks in the classroom, I think we can all agree that.
Yes, I mean, even right now, we're having reports of teachers having that issue right now, where students, you're telling elementary 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 year olds to not hug, to only play with the toys that are in your bubble, or only it's not feasible. Recess, some people are touching each other, and some of the kids are taking off their masks. Some of the kids are using items that other people have been using. So things are still being spread. It's not like it's just everybody's just going to follow everything. Everybody's going to follow protocol. It's not feasible. It's not going to happen. And it's adding to the mental anguish. Teachers are mentally tired. We are doing hybrid learning. We are doing virtual learning. We are doing grades. We are doing meetings. Every virtual meeting that we have, because I know that you can attest to the increased amount of meetings that we have, just so administrators can see that we're engaged, and the amount of stuff that we have to do, deadlines, impact, which is, of course, impact is our evaluation system here in DC public schools. Like, teachers get evaluated. We have impact that's going on. We have right now, standardized testing is still going on. I've not heard otherwise yet, but all of this stuff is still going on. And then they expect us to be all those people all at once. And it's not right, and it's just a disservice to all of us when parents are saying, "Oh, let's get our kids back into school." But what about why are the teachers making it so hard? The question that we should be asking: why are parents not going to all these board meetings demanding more money? Demanding more infrastructure. Why are they not doing that? They're going to the school boards to demand, kids, get back into school now, get back into school, but not demanding the budget to go with that, to make sure that the schools are absolutely safe. And they're not doing that. And so I think there's a question that needs to go to parents as to, do you want babysitters? Do you want somebody to just watch your kid while you have a break? Or do you really want highly qualified educators teaching your kids? And
Absolutely. Thank you, David. That's such good insight. I want to say this, and then I want to move. I want to get an assistant, Pastor Garland's assistant principal. I want to get her expertise, and then I want to move to community activist, Dr. Levy. I want to get his expertise. But to piggyback off of what you said, David, one of my students advised me the other day that she came to me in confidence in the virtual classroom setting, and I always ask my students every morning, "How are you doing?" That's how I always start off my do nows. That's the first question I would say is, "How are you doing?" And then, I'll go ahead and start with the scientific questions. And she said, "Ms. Harper, I've been tested positive for COVID-19. So I say this to say that even though we're in a virtual setting, students are still getting tested, being tested positive up to today's date. I also recently saw an article that states just in the past 9 days that DCPS has notified 20 schools that individuals are testing positive. Now, this is not to just pinpoint out DCPS, but what's going on in DCPS is what's going on in schools all across this nation. Not only is it DCPS students that are testing positive, not only is it Maryland area students that are testing positive, but all across this nation, our students are still testing positive. And I could only think, well, what if I was in the classroom? I would be exposed for the second time to, with students testing positive still. So we must look at the facts, and the facts show us that students are still getting this virus in the midst of this vaccine occurring. People are still getting this virus in the midst of this vaccine occurring. what I want to do, I want to move forward now because Pastor Sherry, an assistant principal of Sherry, I want your expertise, and I want then your expertise, Dr. Levy, and then I want to talk about how is our Black community, how are students in Ward 7 and 8 schools mostly affected? What is the impact on them? Pastor Sherry, would you tell us from your administrative point of view about what is the effect of COVID-19?
Well, I would like to address one of the things I would like to address is the fact that from the mental health perspective, that a lot of people put so much emphasis on contracting COVID-19. The stress starts way before that. The stress starts when you think about um, the, and I'm speaking from an administrator's point of view. When you walk into the school, you know, you have so many hats. You wear so many hats. You're there for the teachers. You're there for the students. You're there for the other administrators. You're there for the custodians. You're there. Your name is being called all day. And so if you are doing your job the way that traditionally your job should be done, you're in contact with a lot of people. Now, so what does that mean? The mental health piece, the stress and the anxiety comes from not contracting. Once you contract it, there's a whole nother issue, but just hearing that someone has been exposed, you get that contact, you get that information from the powers that be, because you may not be in that particular part of the building, or you may not know, because I'm an assistant principal, so I don't get I'm not the first point of contact. So once my principal notifies me that there has been a case in our building, I have to then figure out, wow, where was I? Was I with that person? Was I near that person? Was I in close proximity to that person for over 15 minutes? Did I share some paperwork with that person? I am always in IEP meetings, and although I do all my meetings virtually, I have to sign papers. And COVID lives on surface paper for 12. It can live up to on surfaces for up to, from what I understand, if I remember correctly, 12 days. So one of the things that we have is we're one-to-one, which means all of our students have devices, because we've eliminated paperwork for the most part. But I still have to sign paperwork. I still have to, there is a piece of paper that's outside of my office that has to be signed by custodians when they clean my office. So there's a lot of things that I must do during the day. Now, I personally protect myself, and I personally have a protocol that I follow to make sure I'm safe. But once I hear there's an exposure, it automatically sends me into a place of, oh God, where was I? Oh Lord. And then the teachers that now, when we were fully virtual, the teachers I used to associate with, and of course, I still kept my 6 feet or more. I still didn't share anything with them, we don't eat together or anything like that. But still, now that they have children in the classroom, we're hybrid. And so that means that we have some kids in, some kids out. We have more kids out than in. We have more kids still at home. But those teachers that I used to fellowship with, or even have, didn't feel I could be in a meeting with them if we were in like the auditorium where we could spread, 20 feet apart or more. I don't feel safe, because now that they're in contact with the children, I have to be even more careful. So it starts way before anybody contracts it. It starts when you hear that there's a case in your building, and so then you have to backtrack to figure out when you were if you had any contact. Then on the final thing I want to say is that once you know about it as an administrator, the stress comes with me. I can't give information. So there have been times when I knew that someone in the building had been exposed or was positive, and I knew that they had contact with certain people, and I couldn't say anything. And that's not anything on my school divisions. That's no shame on them. Those are HIPAA laws, and you can't divulge anybody's personal medical information, you can't give that information out. So I may know that one of my teachers has been working with someone that was exposed or has it, and I have to wait until they go through the tracing. But I may already know. So that part for me was always very difficult. That's the way it is. So those are the kinds of things that lend itself to the strain, stress, and anxiety that comes with reopening. You're muted. Joy is muted. You're muted.
Thank you so much for that insight. Thank you. Thank you so much for that insight, Pastor Sherry Garland. Dr. Levy, can you talk to us from a community activist perspective about what are your thoughts on how people are affected from COVID, how our community and families are affected from COVID, and what guidelines do you give, and or do you even follow as far as that goes?
All right. Again, Evangelist Joy, it's an honor to be here on with you today. I just was, before I even say that, I was taking note. I was really soaking in what Mr. David Eiffel and what Pastor Sherry was saying earlier, and how they feel and their perspective on things as being educators. I'm a former educator myself, and I was really absorbing a lot of the information that you shared yesterday as well. But they're wanting to place our teachers in harm's way, reopen schools, place students in harm's way haphazardly. There's one thing about reopening, and I do believe that we do eventually need to get back to a place of normalcy, but we're in the middle of a pandemic. And so when you're in the middle of a pandemic, how can you go back to normal without endangering lives? And the problem that we face is that people are more concerned with their systems continuing to process compared to individual lives. In other words, your individual life does not matter to them. If someone's child dies, and the lady that you all mentioned, the teacher that died, I can't think of her name right now, but she's one of many people who have, hundreds of thousands in our nation have died from COVID. I've had 2 family members who passed from COVID. I've had every person who will normally come to our home has gotten infected with COVID. We're in the hospital, and we can't return to a place of normalcy. We can't. And we have to look at it in multiple facets. David mentioned earlier about the anxiety of placing people back there, but at the same time, you have to remember that we're social beings. We have teachers, you're social beings. I love people. I love being around people. I have 9 godchildren. I have 2 of my children, 2 kids personally, but I'm a wife and I. But we're used to being social with people, and you self-isolate, and we don't take the time to think about the depression that people can have, loneliness on a different level. Because I'll tell you this, I'm married, I have 2 children. It's easy for us to self-isolate. We cut the rest of the world off. But what about that single person, that single mother, the single woman, or the single man? Do you mask up and close down your house for everybody? Now, as far as our home, we, on a medical standpoint, I also work as a counselor.
If you connected on our YouTube, or if you're on Facebook or Instagram,
we do.
The shows on
See,
there.
someone's phone's on.
Live.
Somebody's phone's on.
Okay,
all right,
you
but
can go to Vnet Radio's group, and then you'll see the live right there. Yes.
Hello? Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I think there's a phone call, Dr. Levy, that came in. So let's take a moment. We're just going to pause right there. I think someone may be calling in the comments. So I would ask that we hold off until the end of the topic for you to call in. We welcome you calling in, but just hold off until I'll let you know if there's any comments or questions when you can call in. I think we're good to go. A caller was calling in. Okay, a caller was calling in. Pastor Paget, do you want to tell us what the caller was saying?
Hello?
Yes.
They hung up. They hung up. They
Okay.
hung up.
Okay, thank you. That's
Okay.
okay. We're gonna keep going, Dr. Levy. I'm so sorry about that, and we
All right.
thank you everybody for calling in. We welcome you calling in, but if you could just, I will tell you when to call in, just so that you know we won't. We'll be able to have an easy transition. But could you continue, please, Dr. Levy?
Okay. Yeah, so we were talking about the depression, how do you cut off? So when the virus first came out, it was almost a no-brainer. As fast as the virus was going out, this was airborne. But what the CDC governments were saying, oh, wash your hands, that's fine and all. But when you have something that's airborne, and we talked about this, when you breathe in this cold, we just got over a cold spell, right? And when you breathe out, you can see the mist that you're breathing when it's cold. That's the way the virus passes. When we're breathing, when you talk, moisture is leaving your body. When you breathe, moisture is leaving your body, and that is how the virus passes. This was a no-brainer for any medical doctor, any biologist. But what did they do? They covered up information. What did our president, our former president, do? Oh, stop the testing. They want to stop the testing. They should have done mass testing. So when I go to a building, I could take a test, spit in the cup, swab up my nose, whatever you have to do, and I know that I'm one of the many individuals who are COVID-free in this facility. But what did they do? They covered up information. It was a hoax. The CDC released information saying that it was airborne. It was an airborne virus that passes airborne, and they retracted it. And when they retracted it, then a month later, they re-released the same article, hiding information from the American people when lives could have been saved. They didn't want to shut the systems down. They were so concerned about the systems. But what is so important as individuals, as citizens, as anybody who is alive, you have to value your life and choose the right information. People were still spreading out 5G theories and all types of ignorance that was blasted out, and people were receiving the information. And so where we are in our country at this time, we need to receive right knowledge. We should educate people. I heard Pastor Sherry speaking about this. No one's educating people on what to properly do regarding COVID-19. So as I said, all of our friends who would normally come to our house caught COVID. But before they got a chance to come to our house, we shut our doors to our home. We do not remove our masks. I'm just going to speak on a personal aspect. We don't take our mask off for anybody outside of our home. Not mama, not my dad, not cousins. No matter how well I know you, I do like doctors do. When their patients come in, they act and they pretend as if every patient has COVID, and they do the right protocol. If every citizen would have done this, we would have been ahead of the curve. But nobody wants to do anything right. Nobody wants to wear a mask. The vaccines are out now. Me personally, I'm not for vaccines. This is a new vaccine. The vaccines need to be out for at least 10 years to know that if it's effective. There have been people who've taken the vaccine who's caught COVID the week later. There have been some people who've died from taking the COVID vaccine. I'm not the one to take that risk. I'd rather mask up. But this is not against anyone who is for the vaccine. But this is just a personal thing that I chose not to do for me and my family. But there are people who want a vaccine and they want to do the right thing, but there are people who don't want a vaccine, but they still don't want to wear a mask. I live in Texas. The foolish governor of Texas removed the protection for the public for wearing masks. He took those protections away. So I have several businesses. So there's almost to a certain degree, I'm not protected if I'm enforcing someone to wear a mask in my business if I'm providing public service. So we're in a place where we are destroying ourselves. So I feel that our politicians, they have politicized COVID-19, and instead of opening up, yes, Texas is in a dangerous position. Instead of appropriately opening up, yeah, we need to open up, but look at other countries. They made their businesses COVID-proof. Instead of throwing all this money out to our businesses, I received some of the money myself. Throw all this money out to the businesses. How about this money has to be allocated to COVID-proofing your business? When you walk in the business, if it's a restaurant, you have your own cubicle areas. Schools have their own cubicle areas. And the gyms have their own spaces. Other countries have done this. The United States, which is supposed to be the smartest, strongest nation in the world, We have ignored science and ignored the facts. So if we were to do several things, if we were to expand our testing to where every public facility there is somewhere that they can test a person for COVID who may be asymptomatic, because we forget about it. You want to check the temperatures, but what about the people who are asymptomatic that don't show a fever, who show no signs of COVID-19? They still could pass the virus on. So if you're doing rapid testing in every facility, making the testing available for every citizen, we could be ahead of this. But no, we've chose foolishness. We chose to politicize COVID-19 instead of taking the proper steps to heal and protect our nation. So for our teachers who are being forced to go back, all I say is this: protect yourselves, mask up, buy some cans of Lysol. If you are able to, teachers are already on a limited salary. They don't want to pay you what you're worth. But
Exactly.
if you're able to, if you're able to, pay to get some cubicles or some closures to keep your students separated from one another. It's time for us to save ourselves. I'm talking too much. I could go on and on about
You're
this.
fine. We love that community activist insight, Dr. Levy. Thank you so much for providing us with that insight. You said two things, Dr. Levy, that stood out. First of all, you talked about how Texas is in a dangerous position, and David, we all on the panel agreed with you. And it came to me, what about Maryland, the state of Maryland, where I reside in Washington, D.C.? What about this nation? Just the other day, just yesterday, the governor of Maryland opened up, took all limits off of COVID-19, meaning people can go out and don't and can go in restaurants and can go in stores, and they can go anywhere they want to go now. And he took the guidelines of COVID-19 restrictions away. Now, this is interesting. The state of Maryland did this, but then PG County, which is a county that is the most blackest county in Maryland. I live in PG County. The mayor of PG County said, no, we're not going to do this. So now we have this battle right now. But what comes to my mind is, how are we being affected now when we take these COVID-19 restrictions off of Texas, or we take them off of Maryland? And I'm sure other states are following and are going to follow. And another question comes to mind: how is our Black community affected? How is students in our Black community affected? Because what we do know is that the Black community, we are the ones that seems to be getting COVID the most. Now, statistics and facts for the state of Maryland: 393,000 people have contracted COVID. Just as of yesterday, we are up almost 1,000 individuals that are still contracting COVID. Statistics show that 990 individuals have tested positive for COVID still. In Prince George's County alone, 75,000 people have died from COVID, have gotten COVID, but 1,352 have died from it, excuse me. It goes on and on. The bottom line is 393 cases of COVID is in Maryland in itself, and here we are lifting restrictions. And when we think about our students in the Black community, students in Ward 7 and 8 schools, I taught in Ward 7 and 8 schools predominantly. I was in schools, and I won't name the schools. I was in schools where there was 30 kids in my classroom, where the classroom was packed to capacity. These students didn't even have books. Are these students going to have the same means to getting the vaccines like other individuals? Are the students on east of the river in Ward 7 and 8, are they going to have the same access to this vaccine? That's an equity thing. The issue that I'm seeing is that our Black community, the students in our Black community, may be at a disadvantage because they don't have the same resources that other people have. They may be the last to get this vaccine, and their families may be the first one to increasingly get tested positive for COVID and pass COVID. So I am very concerned in regards to the Black community, but I'm concerned with the Black community at large because this virus is real and it's affecting everybody.
Well, and I don't know if I can just interject for a second.
Yes.
It's not about just the resources. It's also trying to educate the Black community. There's so much that needs to be said about educating the Black community on not only just protecting yourself, but the vaccine itself. Um, and we're not even talking about the kids right now. We're just talking about the adults. We haven't even gotten to the fact of even when are the kids going to get vaccinated? Because then, we still have a percentage of the population that is not going to be vaccinated. And so people will be still vulnerable. We have to also, we need to think about the equity, the not, well, I know we want to say equity, but we want to also say in the Black community, the education of the virus, and making sure that those people that understand how impactful in this Black community it is, and that also the efforts that are being put forth on how much money is being used to educate people about the vaccine, especially our Black and Brown communities, because that's something where I don't think is always going to be equitable at all. We know that equity is a shortcoming in medically, scientifically, historically. It's when we talk about Ward 7 and 8, it's completely different when we talk about people in wards 1 and 2. And when we talk about wards, we're talking about regions in DC. So like how you would have a region in a county. And so people in wards 1 through 3 may not have the same accessibility, or may have more accessibility than people in 7 and 8. And so it's just a lot of dynamics that go with that. And it all goes to say that we don't have one singular streamlined voice that's going forth. Everybody is kind of saying different things. So now it's so much confusion about everybody, and it promotes this politicizing, like Dr. Levy said, about politicizing everything now. People are anti-maskers. People don't want to wear a mask because somebody else told them mask is bad. Somebody said that I don't need to wash my hands for 20 seconds. All I need to do is just put a little hand sanitizer and that's it. Some people say it's so much different voices that goes with it, and it's just no kind of singular voice. And thank God right now we have a top person in Biden right now that at least is putting one singular voice to it. But before we were running around crazy. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for that insight. Such true insight, David. David, you spoke about scientific aspect, and Dr. Levy spoke about scientific aspect as well. And Dr. Levy is a chemist and a biologist. So, and I'm a biologist as well. So I'm a science educator. And I know Dr. Levy already touched on this, but we have to, the broader picture is how effective is this vaccine, as Dr. Levy brought to us. When we think about the effectiveness of a vaccine, and when we think about science, I've also done cancer research. For any science experiment or anything that we are testing, we must do clinical trials. We must do tests, and then we must perform these tests at least 3 to 4 other times to prove a theory to be correct. COVID-19, the vaccine has just been given to people. They just started giving this vaccine to people back in February, I believe. So when we look at this vaccine that's just being given to individuals, the question is, how can we really, from a scientifically and logical approach, how can we really say how effective this vaccine is? What needs to be done is the people that are getting this vaccine, we need to have a time interval. Let's look at 6 months from now and a year from now. How many of those people are still living upon getting this vaccine? How many of those people contracted COVID-19 upon getting that vaccine, we must look at logical data. Yes, it is great that we have these vaccines out. That is wonderful. But we, from a logical approach and from a scientific approach, and Dr. Levy, you would agree with me, we can't say for sure that we know that this vaccine is effective because it's too early, as Dr. Levy's already said, to determine this. So, we people in high places that are making decisions, we must make logical decisions. We must make decisions off of science. We must not make decisions off of guessing and hopefulness, because when we choose to send teachers and educators and students back into the classroom not really knowing how effective this vaccine is, we're playing a guessing game with educators, with students, with families, and with the community. One other thing I want to add to that is teachers have the opportunity to get the vaccine. So that's great that some teachers have the opportunity to get this vaccine. But what about students? What about students in Ward 7 and 8? They are still going to be at risk. And David, you hinted on this as well. Is it fair that me as a teacher, I'm able to get the vaccine, but my students don't have the accessibility to get the vaccine, and then they are able to take this vaccine to their parents? A lot of the students in Ward 7 and 8 are your lower socioeconomic students, and their grandparents play involvement in their lives in bringing them to school. They live with their grandparents. Is it fair to expose their elderly grandparents to the risks of COVID-19?
Well, even so, you have students that right now they aren't able to even get the vaccine because, of course, hasn't been tested on kids. So we're rolling things out and they're doing things as it happens. But it's just I work in Ward 5, actually. I work in Ward 5, and a percentage of there's such a little percentage, even in Ward 5, of parents willing to send their kids to school because they're afraid that they will get the virus and bring it back home. Remember, we're talking about kids who live in lower income housing. When we're talking about that, we're also thinking about kids that are living in multi-generational households. That's where we have to really understand, is that these multi-generational households of students who live with grandma, grandpa, or who grandma and grandpa are their primary guardian. They don't want their kid to go to school, come back, and give them the virus. So they're opting to not even send them to school. So until we even get the option of even having kids to even get a vaccine, which they have not produced one yet for kids, that's the thing. We only have it for 18 and up. And so they're still even trying to test just for kids. And so they're even asking for parents if they would like to do clinical trials with their kids. I don't know what parent would like their child to be a guinea pig, but that's what they're doing. They're even trying to do that right now. But we have a lot of kids that live in impoverished or urban setting in their community, where they don't just have mother and father at home. They have multi-generational households, and we have to address that. It's never going to be back to normal until you have that, because the parents are never the guardians, not even the parents, the guardians are not going to feel comfortable sending their child to a school when they might get the virus back.
Yeah, I do want to interject with that also. As you mentioned earlier, I have children. I refuse to let my children go to school. They've been asking us, "Oh, go ahead, send your children to school. It's safe." Then the next week, there's an outbreak in the classroom. I say, you can save it, because I'm not bringing my children and placing them in harm's way. I have my youngest son suffers with asthma, and so that places him at high risk. He's on a pump all day long, and that's one thing I do not want to jeopardize his life with, is putting him in that place. Now, one thing we do have to understand: people die from all type of things. People die from car accidents, plane crashes, you name it. But when you're adding another dice in the roll, then you're only increasing hazards for other people. That's why our hospitals are being filled up when you have COVID patients filling up the hospitals, when you have someone who just broke or sprained an ankle, then all of a sudden, bam, no one could get treatment. And people, for some reason, they have not comprehended that. But back to the vaccine. I'm like I said, I'm not a vaccine person, but one thing that infuriated me though, when this vaccine first came out, first of all, it wasn't tested long enough. You develop a vaccine in 6 months. We know that COVID-19 affected the Black and brown communities the most and the elderly citizens. And this untested vaccine, who did they offer it to first to test this vaccine on? Black and brown people, elderly people. And it's almost to the point where our people are expendable. Yes, I'm fine with, okay, it may seem like you're putting us in the front line, to be the guinea pigs. So when you're trying to make it seem, oh yeah, we're placing you guys, we're going to give you top priority, you can save it, because I know a test when I see it. Let's remind ourselves about history, about the Tuskegee experiments when they were infecting thousands of Black people with hepatitis. Let's not forget back in the 60s when they introduced a reagent to millions of babies in the United States through the vaccines on accident, a cancer-causing reagent, and all of a sudden in the 70s and the 80s, a whole big boom of cancer patients. We like to overlook history, but I'm a scientist, but I also love history as well. And when we look at this vaccine, yes, we should use wisdom and everything, because some people, they feel that the vaccine is good for them. I've had a lot of my friends have taken it, but I will tell you this: my first set of friends who took it, the ones that I know who took it, they tested positive for COVID the week after they took the vaccine. Let's talk about that. And now I feel possibly they could have come out with a different version, but they were saying, people like, oh, maybe they caught it from somewhere else. There's no coincidence. How you make it almost a whole year not catching COVID, then the week after you took the vaccine, you got COVID-19? Come on, let's use common sense now. For every action, there's a reaction. That's what the basics of science is. But I want to go back to this. And Pastor Donald, I know you would appreciate this aspect. We look at COVID-19, the level of division our nation has seen from COVID-19, from it being politicized to there being a civil war within our own country, a whole new civil movement taking place from racism. And we see all these things taking place, pestilence. It reminds me of the scripture in 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse number 13. It says here, if I shut up heaven that there be no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence among my people, this is God speaking, if I send it among my people, if my people, which are called by my name, will humble themselves, first humble themselves, and pray, seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven. I will forgive their sins and I will heal their land. The problem is we are so stuck. Nobody could tell anybody nothing. You can't tell me to wear a mask. I can't breathe with a mask and you're still smoking cigarettes. Or I can't breathe, and we give all these excuses. Oh, this is wrong. Oh, you can't tell me. You can't tell anybody anything, and that's the reason why our nation has continued to get infected and gotten sicker, because no one is humble enough. Our president wasn't humble enough. The whole coronavirus task force caught coronavirus. Come on now. If this was a war, we lost the war. But the people were not willing to humble themselves. We did not truly seek the face of God. The church even fell. The church leaders were talking about, come on, open the doors, come on back to church. Even the churches out here. Come on, it's all right to come back to church. The pastors caught it. The members caught it. Members in the church died. Is God truly speaking? We need to stop and listen to hear God's voice, and that is the reason why we continue to fall. We don't want to listen to sound reason. And I hear people, well, God's going to protect me. God gives us sound wisdom as well. When death passed through the land in Egypt, he didn't tell them go have church. He told them shut yourselves off in the house and get a lamb for yourself for each house. In this season, instead of rushing to open up, we need to get our people to be still Go to your house, or even if it's going to church, go to your home, and seek God in your home. Close up until death has passed over the land. But we don't want to listen. We don't want to humble ourselves. We don't want to listen to sound knowledge. And that's the reason why our nation is continuing to fall with this virus.
That
Y'all go.
deep. That is so deep. That is so deep. Second Chronicles 7:14. That was so deep, Dr. Nanda. It is so true. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, seek thy face and turn from my wicked ways, then I will heal the land. So true. You know, this is a time of quarantine when we think about it. What does quarantine mean? And yes, Mr. Yes, David.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure, and everybody has their way of fighting this virus. If we come at it from all fronts, and not to say that for me, I'm definitely one that wants to take the vaccine.
Nothing against anybody who wants to take the vaccine.
Never that. So coming at it from all fronts. So coming from it from the perspective of the vaccine, from the protection, coming from it from all of those ways. That's how we beat this. Go ahead.
Yes. Hold on. We have a caller on the phone. We want to take that question. If you have questions, comments, you feel free to call the Vnetwork Radio.
Yeah. Can you ask your question?
Yes.
You okay? You're live. You're live. You can ask your question.
Okay. When you say I'm live, you mean I'm being heard?
Yes, you're heard on the radio.
Okay. I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina, and I've been listening. I had a hard time getting in because of my directions aren't clear. But anyway, I just want to say amen to Dr. Levy. And when I'm looking at everybody, it seems like such a ball of confusion. Everybody's confused and nobody's sure, and there's nobody trusting. How do we trust the people that is behind giving us the virus when in the past they've leaned towards genocide of our race? That's my question. How are we supposed to trust the people behind developing the vaccine when in the past they have been guilty of vaccinating us with syphilis and all kinds of things to take us out? How can we trust them?
Well, I'm gonna be honest. Me personally, I don't with my family. I consider our lives very precious. And I try my best not to chance my life or my children or my wife's life with anybody. And in all honesty, there's no one we can trust. But you have to study for yourself. Some people, they feel comfortable enough to, get vaccines or to get the treatments. I will tell you this, my personal doctor, at the beginning, when she saw the symptoms of her patients, she suggested Tamiflu, antibiotics, Augmentin to be more exact, Tamiflu, Augmentin, and prednisone. The same way they combat the flu and pneumonia. And all of her patients had no complications. But when you have people pushing hydrochloric, I can't remember how to pronounce it properly, hydrochloroquine. Excuse me.
No, hydrochloroquine.
Thank you. And pushing all these other things, the truth gets covered up. So in all honesty, we could put our trust in no one but God. That's why it's so important for us to see God's face. Yet at the same time, there will be multiple avenues for us to combat this curve. David, you mentioned earlier how, you may have some people that may take the vaccine. The vaccine may be effective for some people. For me personally, I'm just not willing to take that risk. Because we've seen there have been several people who've died from the COVID vaccine. There have been several people who still contracted COVID after taking the vaccine. So I'm personally not putting my trust in any doctor or any medical person. I personally like to do. The Bible says, "Study to show yourself approved." So
All right, caller, did I answer your question?
No, I can't hear them.
Okay. All right. You have any other questions?
Excuse me?
Do you have any other questions?
No, really.
Oh.
No, thank you.
Okay. Dr. Livy, can you could you just answer her a question again? She's trying to hear.
Okay. Can y'all hear me clearly? Do I need to get closer to the
Yes.
microphone?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. So, as I said earlier, personally, I trust no one because, as you said, they have there have been things that have been sent out to minority communities, and I'm speaking as an activist. But there have been things that are sent to minority communities, as you mentioned. They've injected syphilis in certain communities. As I mentioned earlier, there were in the 60s they injected millions of babies with cancer-causing reagents using vaccines. So I don't personally trust anything out there, especially something that's been thrown out there on the market and something that was thrown out during the Trump administration. Nothing against anybody who supports President Trump. You know, some people who support him, they have their own reasons. But me personally, there were so many lies that were being perpetuated through that administration regarding COVID. It started off by being a hoax when it was known that it was in our states for months. It didn't say that they had people until about March, but there were people infected with COVID back in November. So when they were hiding the fact that COVID was spreading across our nation, that is the first reason why I wouldn't trust anybody. How they lied and said that you don't need masks, and then they lied. So many lies that were being perpetuated. Then all of a sudden, the vaccine is going to heal us, and these are the same people that perpetuated all the lies and cover-ups, 5G theories. No, I'm going to research and do the studying myself.
Yeah, that's
some people may feel comfortable once their friends have gone forward to take the vaccine, or so if you feel convicted to take the vaccine, do it. Me personally, I'm against. Me just personally, I'm not saying everyone else has to be, but just me personally, I'm not taking it. But there are many things that we could do to curb this, and the vaccine may be one of the things to curb it, but you just have to make that individual choice yourself.
Right. It's all about research and finding out what will be best for you in terms of that. So sometimes, Dr. Levy doesn't want to do the vaccine. Me personally, I do. And so it's just depending on what you and your community you want to do with the vaccine. I think is something that everybody, me personally, I think just doing the research on the Pfizer vaccines and seeing all the documentation and seeing all that has convinced me. But remember, I'll do my due diligence. And what's been going on is that a lot of people will just listen to one person, or they'll listen to that person, and that's how they make their decision. Oh, I just listened to this person. They told me I don't need to wear masks. I don't need to wear a mask because they just think, Trump said it'll just go like a cold. It'll go away with warmth. Remember that lie that Trump did?
Yeah, I remember that.
It'll go away in the summer. It's gonna go away in the warmth. No, and then people started taking off their mask when it was warm, and then people started really dying. And so because you just listen to one person without doing your due diligence, without doing your actual research, that's the problem. Mm-hmm. So always doing the research, always listening to multiple perspectives, and then making your own decision is always the way to go.
Amen.
I certainly agree. Thank you so much, Dr. Levy, and thank you so much, David, for that great insight. I want to add on and say this, that I'm, as a science educator, as someone that has done cancer research at UNC Lineberger Cancer Center, I'm all about the science. I'm all about, following what's the scientific correct way. So if science approves the effectiveness of this vaccine, then I'm all for getting this vaccine. What I see, and a spin that I see to this, is that because teachers are being forced back into the classrooms, and because students are being forced back into the classroom, it's almost like teachers don't have an option to really say, you know, that we are not going to get this vaccine because we're afraid not to get it. But from a scientific perspective, I know logically that not enough time has elapsed to say how effective this vaccine is. And in layman's terms, I feel like it's almost like gambling with our lives here. It's almost like
It's Russian roulette. Russian roulette.
and I hate to say that. I hate to say it like that. And I'm making a general statement. And I'm talking about schools all across this nation. When we put students back in schools before we do clinical trials, when we put educators back in schools before we do clinical trials to see how effective this vaccine has been on people that have already had it, when we put these individuals back into schools, we are gambling. We don't know for sure. We are gambling. And it is time, picking back off of what Dr. Levy said. What he said was powerful. The spiritual hue is, during this time of quarantine, it's a time of isolation. It is time for decision makers, people in high places, to stop making decisions based off of personal gain. Stop making decisions based off of being peer pressured from the parents. Stop making decisions based off of the fact that some of them have been vaccinated before others of us have been vaccinated. But we have to make logical decisions. We have to listen to the voice of God. That scripture that Dr. Levy said was so powerful. We must open up our ears and we must consult God. People in high places, you need to be praying for your cities. You need to be praying for your states. We have to pray for this nation. God, is this what you desire? Do you desire for us to go back into the schoolhouse? Is this your desire for us? Because I truly believe I'm an educator by occupation, but I'm an evangelist by God's higher calling on my life. And I truly believe during this time of quarantine, during this time of isolation, that God wants us to isolate with him spiritually. God wants the individual spirits of the people in this nation to connect with him during this time. This is a time that God is seeking our spirit. He wants us to be listening and consulting with him before we continue to make decisions that affect this nation. And God wants unity in this nation. God wants us to love in this nation. So many times, you know, when our former president was speaking, he used terms like those Democrats, those Republicans. But God doesn't look at what class we are. God is a God of righteousness. God is a God of love. God is a God of equality. God is a God of equity. And God is a God of unity. And God is a God that desires for us to make righteous decisions. So when we have people in high places, in high political places, making these decisions, God doesn't desire you to be peer pressured by any of your colleagues either. God wants us always to stand up for what's right, stand up for what's just. We must stand up for what's right.
Something happened?
Yes, I believe. So callers, if you can, give us a call. And the number to call in is 860-461-7577. 860-461-7577 is the number to call in. And if you can, just call in and ask your questions. And we're going to turn it back over to Evangelist Joy Harper.
And we don't stand up for what's right and what's just in this nation, I'm afraid that this nation, the Black community, students and educators at large, are going to be more negatively affected. We're opening up schools back up right now, but Italy, as we speak, the country of Italy is closing schools again. They're going back to COVID-19 restrictions again because they decided to open schools and the rates are so high. I'm afraid that this is going to happen to us. I'm afraid there's going to be more people losing their lives than ever before. I can only hope for the best, but it is time for us to start making decisions based off of what the Lord is telling us. And I want to open this up back. I want to open this up to, Pastor Garland and Pastor Levi. Do you have any more spiritual, insight to add to that? Because Dr. Levi, thank you so much. What you said, that was so strong. If my people who are called by my name will seek thy face, humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways, and I will heal the land.
I told you yesterday in our briefing that my platform is a very sensitive one, and that I, as an administrator, I have to be, I'm sort of looking at it from both ends, and we definitely have a situation. We use the word unprecedented. These are unprecedented times. They call for unprecedented measures. And I think what we've done that I am, that breaks my heart is sort of piggybacking off of what you said about the quarantining and shutting in. I've realized that my shutting in and my time with the Lord has been very precious. I have grown in my relationship with the Lord because I don't have the vices that I had when I was prior to COVID, pre-COVID. I am not, if I was going through a struggle and I needed comforting, I couldn't wait to get to church Sunday so I could hear a good word. Now I've got to go to God for myself to get a word. Not saying that I didn't do that, but I'm saying, because of course, as a minister, I have to hear from God. So I study and hear from God. But more than ever, I am in the presence of God like never before. And so what I want to take that into the educational field, because I don't want to lose focus of what we're talking about. Should we open schools? Should we bring people back into the classroom? Should we resume things as normal? And what I'm saying is unprecedented times require unprecedented measures. What I'd like to say with that is I don't think we've exhausted what we have. Every conflict and every situation, we know the word of God tells us that all things work together. Remember that all things work together for the good of them that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. So we know that even in this virus, and I very carefully say that because people have lost lives. So that's a scripture that I use very gingerly, and I take it to heart to say that in the right times. But what I'm saying is that instead of us trying to take things back to normal, we did not take this opportunity to really use what we had. We have technology. I have parents that say, I don't know how to use a computer, but we have had to teach them how to use their children's devices in order to hold meetings. We have parents that we've had to teach how to DocuSign documents so that they can send them back to the school electronically. We have had children, I hear conversations in classrooms where children are saying to their teachers, could you resend that to me? Do I need to send that to you in a Google Doc? Canvas, we're using Canvas as our learning platform, and it's very much like Blackboard in college. Our kids are more equipped for college than they've ever been, because going to college may not have been a reality for them. When you think about it, they may not have considered it. Maybe more of our kids will consider going to college online now that they have it licked. Many of our kids have licked the things that we used to struggle with. Many of our kids have begun to be experts on things that I only learned about when I took my classes online for my master's program. So I went to a brick and mortar undergrad program. And so when I got older and decided to go after my master's, boy, was it a learning curve for me. I had to learn how to access Blackboard. I had to learn that I had to check my emails every day. I had to learn that I had to be online every day at the same time for my classes. I learned how to do, breakout rooms. These kids are experiencing things that they're going to need for their future, things that I never even knew about until I was in my 30s. And so when we say online school to them in the next couple of years, and those that are high school students, it will be nothing. And I just don't think that we have exhausted all of the measures or looked at what we have as far as virtual learning. Before the virus even was in our midst, the way we know it now, because it's been there for a minute, I was saying, my daughter and I had a conversation. She's an educator as well. We had a conversation about virtual learning, because let's talk about this real quick. We have a lot of students, and I'm sure you all know, that don't succeed well in the classroom. And a lot of people want to say, our kids are not doing well virtually, but they're not considering the fact that because of behaviors, challenging behaviors, a lot of our children were not doing well prior to COVID. If a child is cutting up in the classroom and there are 20 other students in that classroom, how many of those students have equal access to education when just one child is cutting up? But now what we can do is we can mute that child, or we can take that child out of that environment, and we can continue teaching the other 19 children. And what we have not done is maximize that. And I'm not about kicking kids out of school. I'm all into restorative justice. I'm all into alternatives to suspension, the things we're implementing in our school division. But what I'm saying to you is that child, now that I have that child out of the classroom, I'm calling that home as an administrator, and I'm talking to that parent. Do you know that we just had to put your child out of the classroom? Well, why? And then we talk about it. Those things happen instantly now, and I'm able to access parents like never before. I have been taking full advantage of this opportunity. I've had more contact with my students, more contact with my parents, and more contact with my teachers, because I'm able to go into classrooms virtually and watch how these teachers are interacting with their students. And I'm able to participate sometimes. I've read to classes. I've had so many opportunities that I never had when I was working in the face-to-face environment. I just don't think we're squeezing the juice out of virtual learning. And also, one last thing before I close out this particular discourse, I am saying that one of the things that I feel that we have not done, and I think it's horrible, is that we've gone into classrooms and we're in people's homes, and we have not, instead of us taking advantage of that and being in people's homes, we're trying to close the door there. We're trying to bring the door to a close because we're seeing too much. Well, I know of a child that was being online. We've seen some horrific things, far and few between. But how many of us can hear a parent cursing their child out when the children are face to face? And we have sent people into those homes to help. We have sent help to people. I actually had a parent cry out to me and tell me that her daughter was suicidal, and we were on it right away. We sent our student services department in right away. We're not using the opportunity that God is giving us to bring the family back as the center of education. Our families have scattered and left the children to the schools, and the schools are doing what they want. And not saying that schools are doing bad things, but the parents are out of touch because they're trusting us with their children when they are our partners in education, the first educators of their children. I'd like to see us take more advantage of this virtual learning and squeeze the juice out of what we can get out of it, and think differently about the future in education, that this might be a viable option. And one thing I am proud about my school division is we're opening a virtual academy based on the fact that many of our children, the ones who were being bullied, the ones who are struggling with social anxiety, are choosing to stay virtual throughout the 2021 school year, 21-22 school year, and the 2020. We're not fully opening back up until next year. And there will be a virtual academy for those students who are who have enjoyed being virtual and who are thriving in the virtual environment. Let's squeeze the juice out of this opportunity and take it for what it's worth.
But you know what, though? I like that. But the problem is not every teacher feels like that. I feel that I 100% agree with 1,000% agree with you, because that this definitely has bridged the gap. But unfortunately, they have teachers, like this is my son's teacher, they aren't making it easy in the school district. They are not making it easy for parents to continue doing virtual learning.
Right.
I've been able, both of my sons suffer with mild autism. And
Mm-hmm.
so with them being at the computer, I'm able to work with them more diligently now. We'll say this. Oh, I miss having a teacher be able to drop my kids off and say bye and see y'all 6 hours later. Oh, I miss those days. I've missed those days because all daddy's free time, you know, most of my business, I'm at my office or I work from home, so I'm not able to work as much. But I've been able to get my children to focus better now, and I've been able to get them to hone in on certain skills. Compared to being in the general class setting, the teacher can't work one-on-one with people. But what's happened with our class, with my son's class, the teacher only comes on for like maybe 30 minutes, and they say, okay, well, we're busy because everyone is sending their children to school. Like they're being haphazard out here, so they don't pretty much care if their kids get COVID. But and so it makes it hard on parents like us, because I see the virtual learning experience has been it could have been even more beneficial if our teachers had that mindset to want to be able to give all the resources they could virtually. But unfortunately, we just get 30 minutes a day, and the 30 minutes a day, the teacher's not even teaching on the screen. She's walking around with her computer screen, walking around the class, teaching the students in the class. So my children, they're not really able to fully benefit from it. So fortunately, daddy's a teacher, and my wife, she used to work at, she was a principal secretary.
But
So we're able to.
No,
I'm sorry.
I 100% agree. I was saying I agree with that, but go ahead.
Yeah, but unfortunately, the school. See, if I mean, Pastor Sherry, if the teachers out here don't have that mentality. I'm
Yes,
say
and what I'm saying is that's what you're saying is exactly what I'm saying. We haven't perfected what the opportunity presented. So here you are, a parent. You say if you decide that virtual learning is better for your children, what we're doing in the virtual academy is we're picking our best virtual teachers. We're picking the ones that have had success, because everybody can't do it and everybody's not doing it. But what I'm saying is we should be working with parents. We should be working with, not to stay virtual, but as this virtual learning is presenting itself, what do we need to do better? So we'd be talking to you, Dr. Levy, and we'd talk to parents, and we'd work together to make it work. And if your complaint is, hey, our complaint is our kids are on too much. We don't do 30 minutes. We do the entire period, and our teachers are there from the beginning to the end. Now, I've seen different situations, but what I'm saying is the key is, let's get the juice out of it. Let's see what we can do to make it better and make it work and make it a thriving, instead of throwing everybody back into school and just say, let's get back to normal. What opportunities does this present to children or to parents or families that this may work for? So instead of let's try to get back to normal, let's work through this and see what we can get out of the experience. That's my key.
Yes, if I may interject, that's what you said is so deep, Pastor Sherry. As an educator, and I look at the individuals in Ward 7 and 8 schools, and I look at some individuals that have special needs, and I look at individuals in schools all over, with special needs. This is a time and opportunity for those individuals to take advantage of being able to do their work online, because this is a tech savvy age. This is the 21st century. So you have a lot of kids that are struggling with reading, especially in our DC public schools. we have a lot of kids that are struggling. We have students in the 9th grade. I've taught students in the 9th grade that are reading on a 5th and 6th grade level, to be honest with you. This is a time where these students can take advantage of being on an online platform. They can work at their own pace, getting their work done. They can, those students that struggle with black and white print and reading black and white letters, their teacher is able to bring that material to them in a more engaging way. Individuals love their cell phones, they love their computers, but this is a time where we can use all of this great technology and use it to our advantage as far as the educational system goes. So what you said was just so powerful. I don't think that we are really taking advantage of this opportunity like we should be. I don't think that we're really giving it a real chance when individuals are saying, well, students can't learn unless they're in the classroom. That's absolutely not correct, if you would ask me. They have an advantage and a greater opportunity at this point. So thank you so much, Pastor Sherry, for just adding that insight.
And I'd just like to add this before, because I want to leave it in a place where my heart is really speaking. It's not for everybody. It's not for everybody, but let's make it let's keep the door open for the opportunities that it presented. Who would have ever thought that you would be able to go to college online? That's new. Yeah. That's relatively new. It used to be you had to attend, but what about if you have, if you're wheelchair bound, or what if you don't have the resources to go to a 4-year school and pay for the room and board, but you can still get a degree. What about if you have children and your schedule, you work? There are so many. So like I was saying, addressing Dr. Levy, what can we do to be of service to you to help your children be successful? What can we offer you in your home to make sure that your children will not fall behind and you and your wife don't just completely lose your minds? What can we do? One of the things we did was offer daycare provision for parents who work full time. The daycare, we paid for daycare for parents, things like that. But I don't feel like we're exploring the opportunities that could be opened up. And like David said earlier, what about the monies that are being, that we could use to make sure when we do return, everything is safe? If you had to have a caretaker come into your house and have that, what about those types of things? We just haven't, I don't feel that we've used the opportunity like we could to grow. I think we're just trying to hurry up and get things back together. That's what I think.
A lot of rushing. And
Okay,
to even say about to the point, just very quickly, saying about hybrid education. A lot of people are rushing to also this hybrid education, but you're asking teachers to do 2 different things. You're asking them to take 2 different jobs. You're telling them to do virtual, give all those kids very, very much one-on-one attention, but then you're also telling them, oh, okay, but these kids are here, give them attention. So to that point, Dr. Levy was saying about that, it's unfeasible. It's really not unfeasible, but it's really not right to put teachers in that vulnerable position, especially me being one of those teachers where we have to, I do 45-minute classes and then we have group project for like 30 minutes. It's so much that has to go into it, is that to give those students who are in person attention, but then don't forget those people who are virtual. And so it is so much, and that we are absolutely doing 2 jobs, not getting paid anymore, of course, because they don't want to do that. We can't get paid more, but they want to tell us, do more of these tasks and make sure you have grades in, make sure you do this, make sure you have that, make sure, remember, and I don't know if Sherry, you do this in your district. Our district, we have assignment trackers where we have to track assignments for each of the students. We have to do live attendance trackers where we have to put in whether they're in live. We have to do another tracker to track every time we call parents or every time we make contact. We have to track everything. And so we barely have a lot of time for ourselves. and it's just it's a lot. So the people have to think about that as well. The teachers are people.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Exhausted.
Yes. Well, we have a comment. The comments reads as follows: We can't get back to normal. This is the new normal. We have to adjust and do our best to keep ourselves safe the best we can. This pandemic will not last forever. It's up to all of us to pull the positives out of this chaos. This time we are living in has happened before. How will we handle it? God is with us. That is a deep question. The commenter, it says that in her opinion, education should be virtual until things get better, she says. And I think we would all agree with that. I agree with that. I can only speak for myself, but I think Dr. Levy, you said that as well. Are we all in agreement with that? Because that was a question that I wanted. That is a question that I want to stand out in everybody's mind. Should students go back into the classroom knowing, based on what we've discussed during this panel discussion, based on what we know, is it safe? And I just want that. I just want us to think about that. I just want us to take time to just think about that, and we may revisit that at the end in a little bit. We're going to wrap this up, but I want us to I want that to stand out in the back of each other's mind. But I want to go back really quick to what you were saying, Pastor Sherry, about academics, and thank you for that comment. That was a deep comment. Christina Evans, thank you for the comment. Pastor Sherry, Assistant Principal Sherry, what you said was so deep. And as an educator, this is what I can say. I can say, from what I observed, the students that was in the classroom and that applied themselves, they're still doing great work. They're still doing good. Students that took the initiative to get their work done before COVID, they're still taking the initiative to get their work done after COVID. And David, you're clapping, so you would agree. Would you agree with me, David? So when we talk about students can't learn on a virtual setting, as Dr. Levy said, and the Pastor Sherry said, it's not for everybody. But students, again, the students that were doing great before COVID, they're still doing great. They still have A's. They still have B's. The students that were struggling before COVID, I am seeing some improvements in some of those students, but I'm also seeing it from a different perspective. Some of those students that were struggling and not getting their work done before COVID, they're now using COVID-19 as a crutch.
Let me address that as an administrator. I see kids that were doing well, not doing well. And it's directly I'm saying you're right. You're 100% right. Yes. I see students that were doing well. I see students that were playing around, they're playing around. But I see some students, there's a small number of students who are they're like, this COVID, this virtual thing, I can't get it. And I probably would have been one of those kids. I just cannot get it. And they don't have the support at home. But that's what I'm saying. Those are the kids that we need to address that situation. But don't make it seem like because virtual learning is going on that these kids are just doing so terrible. What it is that a lot of what we see is, you just know now that a lot of times teachers were busting their behind and wasn't getting recognition for it. Y'all know the truth. You know, when it first started, the teachers, they were saying, teachers, that there were a whole bunch of TikToks of parents going crazy and saying, you know what, I want to give my teacher a gift my children's teacher a gift from now on. I found out little Johnny wasn't the sweet little boy. I was running up to school laying teachers out, and I realized now Johnny's at home with me, and he was doing, yes, I want to send him back to school, and I'm going to pay the teacher. If I got to pay the teachers out of my pocket. All of that was happening in the beginning, remember? So we know, but see what's happened now, and that's what I said about it's not exhausting. Now and my daughter is an educator, and she said, I hate when people say that because I'm an educator, but my child at home in the classroom is a different child than I was, homeschooling. So it's not just across the board that it's not about the parents not doing their job. What we have now is a greater respect. What we can we can benefit from is a greater respect for what we do as educators. That's all I'm saying. And we need to help those who are struggling for real. And we need to get behind those that have been playing all the time, but we've been dealing with it at school and not really getting support. Because now when we call home, folks answering the phone now. Because they were just looking for the day when we say, let them come back. So when I call parents now, they say, some of them say, Miss Garland, what you need? Because I don't know what else to do. But there are parents who are still not allowing me to call. They got me blocked. They have our school blocked. And those are the same parents that when we called before, they didn't pick up. So don't make it look like because of the failure is so bad because of the virtual learning. Yes, that applies to some situations, but it's been like that. It's just magnified. Now what we going to do about it?
Yes. Sherry, yes, Pastor Sherry, this is just so deep. And I was smiling a little bit because it's so true. Parents are now have an opportunity to see what teachers and administrators are experiencing in the classroom. Parents are seeing the real effect of how their kids may act during a learning setting. Parents are getting to spend time with their children and actually take time to raise their own kids, because we as educators, we wear many hats. We are not only the educators, but we are the parents, we're the mother, we're the father, we're the administrators. We wear many hats, but now God is giving parents an opportunity to rear their kids in the right direction, to take time out and help their students with their work. And as an educator in the classroom, that was one of the major things that I saw in some of the schools that I taught at. And you can, David, if you can chime in and tell me whether you agree with me. And Pastor Sherry and Dr. Levi, I know you mentor kids.
I mean, that was one of the biggest things that I even when I would talk to teachers in our Washington Teachers Union, that was one of the biggest things that we all are so happy to know and see that now it's actually being placed on the parent. Now it's actually, we were always struggling to get in touch with a parent. Now is that, hey, the parents are getting more in touch with us, where they're saying, okay, my kid cannot get online. Oh, by the way, did you know your kid hasn't been in any of the live lessons for about 3 weeks? Oh, why? Then we can have a conversation. So it's a lot more where parents are finally, and not to say a lot of parents haven't, but we would have a lot of parents that we would struggle with to even get them to even answer a phone and to even contact us. But now with this virtual setting, it's so much easier to message out parents, because we got all of their numbers on our parent newsletter, where and where we can send out messages to them instantly, where it's easier, where we can really make sure now that our parents are able to really engage with their kids a lot more and help their kids out a lot more, where it was before, where parents just kind of, handed them off to us. And I think that's something that we need to also address and say that this is something maybe, hopefully will change now, that parents are seeing that. Now more responsibility will be with the parents.
And prayerfully, from this point on, we will see that change. They will be so thankful that now they will see the partnership works. Just like Joy said earlier, Evangelist Joy said earlier, teamwork makes the dream work. So now as they will see themselves more as partners. So when the children come to us, and it's, we're virus free like China and like Wuhan, where it's I'm not going to address that, but they are practically COVID free. Now when we get back to the classroom, we'll have some Dr. Levy parents. We'll have those parents that are on top of their game. We have many of them, but hopefully that will spread and there'll be more of a partnership in education. And that's what I'm talking about, squeezing the juice out of squeezing the juice out of this situation, getting the good out of it, getting the nectar out of it, and being able to move forward in a better way, and that will be better coming out than we were going in.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I will say this. I want to address one of the ladies who made a comment earlier, and then also Tony Stewart, one of the comments on here. One of the statements was made that everyone should be doing virtual, and we need to use wisdom in this time. One thing I do want to talk about this virus. The virus has caught a lot of people off guard because we've just gotten so fascinated on just checking the temperatures and seeing the preliminary things, but we are not taking into account the people who are asymptomatic. When you have someone who is asymptomatic, meaning that they're a host or they're carrying the virus, but they are showing no signs, like Idris Elba. He had no signs whatsoever of COVID, and he just decided to get tested because someone else around him had COVID, and he tested positive. So that same person who was asymptomatic could carry it to someone else, and they get the full symptoms, and they end up in ICU. So that goes back to us talking about having rapid tests. This is something that was discussed at the beginning, but now no one wants to do it. They don't want to do the rapid tests. And so holding something virtual is important. I do feel, having hand sanitizer and everything, that's fine. And social distancing is fine. But when you're having breath passing around the room, some people breathe harder than other people. Some take a deep breath. So having virtual is important because what's happening is you have people, and when I say people, I mean teachers as well, who are not doing the right thing as regards to COVID. And I'll go ahead and say this outright. Even the teachers that instruct our students, they're walking around the class with no mask on. The students, they're not wearing their masks. So I know that if I drop my children off there, I'm not putting them in a safe environment. These are not common times. This is not a normal time. And so with that being said, if we do use wisdom and put the right precautions in place, as I said, if we put some shields like Wuhan and other countries that the virus started, they're opening back up because they listened to science, they took proper precautions. They're having shields, those little partitions at every desk, having partitions at every restaurant. If you're doing the right thing, then we can go back to a semi-sense of normalcy. But what has happened, though, I will say this virus has been an eye-opener to see who people really are. Some people, they're trying to get the COVID. They're fine with COVID. They want to spread COVID to everybody else. They don't mind COVID being integrated, but they don't understand the cascading effects. And so with that being said, we have to use sound wisdom, as you said, Ms. Evans. That's one of the ladies who made the comment. And we have to use sound wisdom. So, gloves, hand washing, social distancing, temperature checks, that's important. But if we can get some rapid tests in the facilities, this could help us out. But what's happened is this. I will say this. But COVID-19 has been an eye-opener. It has revealed to us who people are. It has revealed, I'm going to even say this, it's revealed who the false prophets were. All these prophets out there talking about, COVID's going to be over. That's even the ones with the presidency. 2020 was a year, guys. I mean, I don't know if I'm the only one who experienced it, but 2020 was a year. The angels were supposed to be coming from Africa to help help somebody win the election. Let's talk about I had to cut, I love God. I love God with my whole heart. And Pastor Sherry, you brought something up earlier saying how you've gotten closer to God while you were at home. You're not the only one who's experienced this. And we've gotten so dependent on preachers, but God revealed who a lot of preachers were. I had to cut off TBN with some of those false prophets running around there. Yeah, I'm saying it on the air too. False prophets. Everyone, the Lord said Donald Trump's going to win. Well, the Bible says what false prophecy is. COVID's going to end. Even with people with businesses, people who with businesses have shown they don't care. They rather sacrifice the lives of their patrons than shut their business down, or sacrifice their lives than to cut the curve. I mean, I look at some business. Yeah, I don't know if y'all remember at first, Walmart, they were washing all the baskets down and everything. They had little lines to walk in. But now, nobody washing the baskets off. Everyone just walking in. No one's wearing a mask, or at least in
Yeah.
our area. And so we just need to get to a point where we realize the truth of what's going on, and all of us need to use sound wisdom and protect ourselves appropriately.
Yes, yes. That is so true. Dr. Levy, thank you so much for that insight. I see that we have a comment. What are the children saying about this pandemic and how's it affecting them? And this is a great question. We was just doing a community meeting with our students, and not too long ago. Every Thursday we have community meetings, and the students are asking, when do we get a chance to come back into the classroom? Because students, they miss their peers, they miss their friends. A lot of students are not getting that experience. Imagine it's been your junior year, senior year. They don't know what it's like to get to go to prom. They don't know what it's like to get to go to a dance. They are missing the social avenues. They're missing football games. They're missing pep rallies. They're missing basketball games. So the children are really negatively affected by this. And it's very unfortunate that our kids are being negatively affected and they are eager to go back into the classroom. But at the same rate, I know I, as an educator, I remind the students, it's safety first. And that's how I feel like we have to look at it that way. We would love for our students, I would love for my students to be back into the classroom where I can interact with my students. And I think everybody on this panel would say the same thing. We miss our students. We love our students. We miss that personal one-on-one interaction with our students. We miss being able to personally direct and guide our students in the classroom and give them that one-on-one support. But it is safety first. I don't want to put my students at jeopardy. I don't want other students to put each other at jeopardy. So even though we miss the social aspect of things, we have to do what's safe during this time, when it's very unprecedented time. We must follow safety protocol, and we must listen. Again, this is just so powerful. We must be obedient and listen to the voice of God. And I want to piggyback off of, want to say one other thing. Dr. Levy and Pastor Gardner was saying that this is the time, and I was saying during this time of quarantine, it's a time of isolation, and it's a time that God wants us to get connected to Him. That Pastor Sherry is not the only one that has underwent that, as Levy said. I accepted my calling during COVID-19. I had been running from my calling for a while. I wrote my first sermon at the age of 21 years old. But during this time of quarantine, I was able to be in a quarantine position where I was, through prayer and supplication, the Lord was able to get my attention. I could no longer make an excuse of saying, oh, I'm going to go to the mall today. I'm going to go to all of these different places. I did not have this opportunity, but I was able to, accept the calling on my life and do what God has ordained and purpose for my life during this time. And I'm so thankful. Thank you so much. We're about to wind this broadcast down to an end. The question that I want to leave on everybody's mind is, should students and should educators and should families, should they go back into the classroom? And that's just a question I want us all to think about based on the information on this panel. Do you think it's safe? I want you to stay tuned for part B. There's going to be a community conversation coming up soon. I want you to stay tuned and follow the Vnetwork radio, because there will be a part 2 to this. I thank everyone so much for tuning into this panel. Does anyone on the panel have any last minute things to say?
I'd just like to say thank you so much for having me be a part of this forum. And I think that this is that more forums need to be had like this that include teachers. I think that's what's really lacking in a lot of the conversation they're doing. Even the ABC is doing a special on the children and COVID, but yet have never had a series or comments of how teachers are affected. And so I think that that's something that needs to be said. And I think hopefully, this provides some more avenues for teachers to be heard.
I want you to know that I appreciate you as educators and parents, and I love you, and I pray for your well-being throughout the rest of the school year.
Again, thank everyone so much for tuning into the VNet Radio. And Dr. Levy, I'm going to leave it to you to say the last words.
Well, I'll just say for everyone, use sound wisdom. Don't just follow the leader. Don't just do what your peers are doing. Make sure you take time out to study, to show yourself approved, to protect yourself, take your family. Don't make any haphazard decisions. Now is not the time to play around. Now is not the time. We're not in normal times. But as I said before, if we can come together as a nation, and if we can humble ourselves. I know we come from diverse backgrounds, diverse political backgrounds, diverse communities, but if we can humble ourselves enough to come together and unite, seek God's face and pray, turn from our wicked ways, then we can hear from heaven. COVID exposed a lot of stuff. COVID exposed the true racism that was out there because everyone was off of work. They were able to go out on the streets and do all the things that they wanted to do. COVID revealed the horrors of our nation. But if we can come together humbly and seek God's face, God's going to hear from heaven. He's going to forgive our sins and he's going to heal our land. But it's based off of you. It's based off of all of our actions. God bless you all. And it's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you, Pastor Donald. Thank you, Evangelist Joy. And it was an honor to be with you, Mr. David and Pastor Sherry.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you so much for tuning into the Vnetwork Radio. Please follow, share this broadcast, follow us, and share this broadcast.
As this coronavirus spreads, more than 160,000 cases in the United States, over 2,980 deaths.
I cry to my father from his child. I cry. Only you can help me out. I cry. Lord, no one understands. I cry. 'Cause only you can. I cry. I cry. rescued me, and then you set me free.
You're muted.
Audio. There was such a thank you so much for tuning into the Vnetwork Radio. That was such a beautiful tribute. That was such a beautiful tribute. Thank you so much, Dr. Levy, for writing that song. I want to encourage everyone that's listening to go vote for Dr. Levy. That song that he has just played, he is a 2021 Gospel Choice Music Awards nominee. So please go vote for him. Vote online at www.gospelchoicemusicawards.com. He has been nominated across categories: Gospel Religious Songwriter of the Year, Male Artist Vocalist of the Year, Song of the Year, Video Project of the Year. He wrote this song and produced the video. Such great talent. Please, everyone, go vote for him. Thank you so much for tuning into the Vnetwork Radio. Please continue to follow the Vnetwork Radio. We will be back for a part 2 soon. Please follow Vnetwork Radio. Please follow Dr. Levy. Please follow his music. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you, everyone, for being a part of this broadcast.